The Countess took a homeless man into her home, and you won't believe what he asked her to do. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The clock in the hall had just struck 9 when Bianca closed the last letter of the day. She set down her pen, cleaned the nib with a precise motion, and aligned the pages into a small, perfect stack. For a moment she remained seated at her desk, listening to the thin sounds of the house at night, a log settling in the sitting-room hearth, a distant clatter from the kitchen, the faint murmur of the wind sweeping up from Lake Como. Another day gone. Another day just like the one before. She blew out a quiet breath and rose. The room around her was filled with books, maps, and carefully ordered papers, but no voices. Her husband's portrait hung above the marble fireplace. She glanced at it briefly, as she always did, with a mixture of respect and weary habit. "You would say I'm too cautious," she murmured to the painted man. "But then, you are not here to answer for me when they talk." She turned toward the door, ready to follow the same small path as every evening. Corridor, staircase, dining room, a simple meal taken in silence. Her black silk skirts brushed softly against the carpet as she walked. But before she reached the corridor, a sharp sound cut through the routine. The bell at the gate rang. Once, twice, a third time, more insistent. Bianca stopped. No one visited at this hour, not without warning, not in winter. A moment later, footsteps hurried along the corridor. Marta, the housekeeper, appeared in the doorway, cheeks flushed, keys rattling at her waist. "Countess," Marta said, trying to sound calm and failing a little, "someone is at the gate." "I heard the bell," Bianca replied. "Who is it?" The coachman went to look. "He says it is a man, on foot, alone. He seems in poor condition." "In poor condition?" "His clothes are ragged, signora. He can hardly stand. Carlo thinks he might be a beggar from the road." Bianca hesitated. The air in the room felt colder all at once. "At this hour," she murmured, more to herself than to Marta. "In this weather." The wind groaned faintly against the window panes, as if to underline her words. "Shall we send him away?" Marta asked quickly. "Carlo can give him a coin or send him down to the village. The inn is not far. It is not proper, madam, to—" "If he can hardly stand," Bianca interrupted, "he will not reach the inn." Marta's mouth tightened. "We do not know who he is." "No," Bianca said. "We do not." They stood there for a heartbeat, looking at one another. Bianca could see the worry in Marta's eyes. Not only fear of danger, but something more delicate, more poisonous. Reputation. "How many servants saw him?" Bianca asked. "2, perhaps 3. They are all talking about it already." "Of course they are," she said softly. Marta lowered her voice. "If you allow him inside, people will say that a gentleman no longer protects this house." Bianca felt a brief sting at that, but she did not let it show. "They already say that," she replied, "because he is dead." Marta flinched. "Forgive me, Countess. I did not mean—" "I know what you meant. Come, we shall see this man. Signora, I beg you, at least remain inside. Let Carlo speak with him if he comes too close." "If he has come to the gate," Bianca said, "then he is already too close for me to pretend I do not hear him." She left the room with a determined step. Marta followed, still muttering warnings under her breath. They descended the staircase. A draught slipped through the old stone, cool against Bianca's face. When they reached the entrance hall, the front door stood open, letting in strips of cold night air and the smell of damp earth. Carlo, the coachman, stood there with a lantern. Its light fell on the gravel path beyond the door and on the figure leaning against the iron bars of the gate. Bianca stepped closer. The man outside was not old, perhaps 30, perhaps a few years more. Hard to say in that thin light. His clothes were travel-worn and dusty, the fabric frayed at the cuffs and hem. His boots looked as if they had carried him too far for too long. His hair, dark and overgrown, clung in damp strands to his forehead. He was not bleeding. There were no dramatic wounds, no bandages soaked with red. But his posture spoke of simple exhaustion, shoulders sagging, head lowered, one hand gripping the gate as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. When Carlo lifted the lantern higher, the man winced and raised a hand to shield his eyes. "Who are you?" Carlo called. "What do you want?" The man licked his lips before answering as though each word cost effort. Forgive me. I need shelter, just for the night. His Italian was clear, the accent refined. No slurring, no roughness of the tavern in his speech. I will go at dawn. Carlo turned to Bianca. You see, Countess, he can speak, he can walk. The village inn will take him. We need only give him the direction. The man heard that and looked up. His gaze found Bianca's. It was not the gaze of a wild creature, nor of a man drunk or desperate with madness. His eyes, though shadowed with fatigue, were lucid, startled, almost apologetic. Bianca felt something in her chest give a small, involuntary twist. How far have you walked? She asked, stepping closer to the threshold. He tried to think. I do not know. I was on the road for some hours, perhaps many. I lost track. Where did you come from? I do not know that either. You do not know? Marta whispered behind her. The man's hand tightened on the gate. I remember. A road. Trees. Then cold. Then here. It is as if there is a fog behind me. Are you hurt? Bianca asked. Only tired. My head aches. My legs shake. He managed a faint, self-conscious smile. I am not a danger to you, Signora. I barely have the strength to stand. Marta tugged at Bianca's sleeve. Countess, please. Bianca watched the man for a long moment. The wind picked up, carrying a chill that made her shiver in her thin evening gown. Carlo, she said finally, open the gate. Carlo gaped. Madam, open the gate, she repeated. To his credit, Carlo did not argue a second time. He strode out, keys clinking, and unlatched the iron bars. The man swayed when the gate moved and Carlo had to catch his arm. Careful, Carlo muttered. Do not fall and break your head on my stones. The stranger gave a quiet, grateful laugh that turned quickly into a cough. Bianca stepped back to allow them to pass into the hall. Marta shut the door again, sealing out the wind. The sudden stillness of the house wrapped around the three of them and the man leaning on Carlo's arm. Bring another lantern, Bianca told Marta, and send someone to heat broth. We will put him in the east wing, the blue room. The blue room? Marta nearly squeaked. For him? It is the furthest from the main staircase, Bianca answered calmly. The servants' rooms are full, and I will not send him to the stables like an animal. Marta pressed her lips together, but did not argue further. She hurried away, calling for a maid. The man watched Bianca, breathing carefully, as though each breath still hurt his chest. You are too kind, Signora, he said. I may be foolish, she replied. We will see which word is more accurate in the morning. What is your name? He opened his mouth, closed it. A flicker of alarm crossed his features. My name is... He frowned, searching the air as if the word might be written there. I am sorry. It escapes me. You do not know your own name? Carlo asked, incredulous. I knew it, the man said slowly. But when I try to grasp it, it slips away. There are pieces, fragments, a voice calling me, a hand on my shoulder. But the word itself, he shook his head. It is gone. Bianca felt Marta's earlier warning echo inside her. A nameless stranger, a widowed countess, a house full of servants with quick tongues. You remember nothing? She asked quietly. He hesitated. I remember certain things. A room with high ceilings, a long table, people speaking of lands and accounts, a hand signing a paper, music in another room. But when I try to see faces, they blur. Carlo sniffed. He remembers tables, but not his own name. Bianca ignored him. Do you remember any town? Any sign along the road? Anything that tells you where you came from? Only that I walked for a long time, the man answered, and that I felt I had to keep moving, as if something bad would happen if I stopped, but I cannot say what. I know this is no help to you, Signora. If you wish me to go, I will try to reach the village. He tried to straighten, as if to leave, but his knees softened, and Carlo had to support him again. Do not be absurd, Bianca said. You can barely stand. You will stay. Tomorrow we will see what can be done. He looked at her with such naked relief that she had to look away for an instant. Thank you, he said. I will not forget this kindness. His tone, his choice of words, the way he bowed his head, It was all too graceful for a man who claimed the road as his home. Bianca noticed every detail. She said nothing. Two maids arrived with a second lantern and a puzzled expression. "This way," Bianca told them. "We shall take him upstairs. Slowly, Carlo." Carlo grunted. "I am not carrying him, that is certain, but I will keep him upright." They guided the stranger up the staircase, one careful step at a time. His breath came a little too fast, but he did not complain. Every now and then he glanced at the paintings on the walls with a faint, curious recognition, as though the style of brushwork and the subjects were familiar territory. In the blue room, the bed was quickly stripped and remade with fresh linen. The maid opened the shutters to let in a little air, then closed them again against the cold. A jug of water and a cup were set on the bedside table. Carlo eased the man down onto the mattress. For a moment his shoulders sagged with sheer relief. He closed his eyes, then forced them open again, as if afraid to appear ungrateful by falling asleep too quickly. "You will manage from here," Carlo said. "I hope." "I will, thank you," the man replied. Marta hovered in the doorway, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. Bianca went to her side and whispered, "Send one of the maids to sit in the corridor, at least until he falls asleep, and have a footman sleep downstairs by the door, just in case. There, you see, I can be cautious." "And our reputation," Marta murmured. "That I will guard myself," Bianca answered. She stepped back into the room. "You should rest," she told the man. "Broth will come shortly. Drink it, sleep. In the morning, if your name has returned to you, we will begin to ask questions. Until then, we will call you—" She searched his face, as if the letters were written there. "Lorenzo," he said suddenly, with a small gasp of relief. "Lorenzo. Yes, that is mine. I am almost certain." "Very well," Bianca said. "Lorenzo. It will do for tonight." "It is a beginning," he agreed with a weak smile. When the servants withdrew and the door was left half open, Bianca walked back toward her own rooms with Marta at her side. "This will not be easy, Countess," Marta said softly. "If anyone in the village hears that there is a man in the house, and yet—" "I could not leave him on the road," Bianca replied. "You could have sent him to the inn." "Yes," Bianca said. "I could have." They said nothing more until they reached the door of Bianca's chamber. "Thank you, Marta," Bianca said. "You may go. Tell the kitchen not to wait for me. I will not come down to dinner." "You must eat," Marta protested. "Later. Bring something up, perhaps," Bianca answered. "For now, I am not hungry." Left alone, she paced the length of her room once, twice. The fire burned low. Shadows gathered in the corners. Outside, the wind rattled the bare branches of the trees. "What have you done?" she asked herself. Taken in a man with no past. Risked the one thing she still possessed, the unblemished dignity of a widow who lived quietly and caused no trouble. She sat by the window and looked out at the dark line of the lake. The water was invisible, but she could hear it faintly, shifting under the night sky. A stranger, a name that came back only in fragments, a voice too polished for the road. Bianca rose again, restless. At last, she picked up a shawl, wrapped it around her shoulders, and opened her door. The corridor was nearly dark. Only a single lamp burned at the far end near the stairs. The housekeeper had indeed posted a maid near the blue room. Bianca could see the girl fighting sleep on a small chair, hands folded in her lap. "Go to your bed," Bianca whispered when she reached her. "I will sit here a while." The maid startled, then shook her head. "Countess, the Signora Marta said—" "I know what she said. I am giving you leave. Go." The girl hesitated, then rose, grateful. "Thank you, madam." She slipped away down the corridor. Bianca settled gracefully into the abandoned chair. The door of the blue room remained slightly ajar, as she had ordered. She could hear the faint rustle of sheets within, the quiet shift of a man trying to find a position that did not make his bones protest. "Lorenzo," she said to herself under her breath, tasting the sound. It felt like a real name, not something invented. Time stretched. The lamp flame wavered. The house was so still she could hear her own heartbeat. At last his breathing inside the room changed. It grew slower, deeper, sleep finally claiming him. Bianca should have gone back to her bed, but she remained. She heard him stir. Then, in a low, troubled murmur, he spoke. The words were indistinct at first, wrapped in the softness of dreams. No, it is mine, my duty. His voice rose slightly. Do not sign. I am here. Bianca leaned closer, straining to catch the sounds. Lorenzo, she called softly. You are safe. You are in my house. Sleep. He did not wake. His head turned on the pillow. His hand reached out blindly, fingers closing around empty air. Then he whispered a string of words, more clear now, each syllable distinct. Lorenzo di Montelupo, Marchese di Montelupo. The title hung in the darkness like a sudden flare. Bianca went cold. The house of Montelupo was one of the oldest and most respected noble families in Lombardy. Their lands stretched across valleys and hills. Their salons in Milan were crowded every season. She had attended dinners in their palazzo years ago at her husband's side. The title Marchese di Montelupo was not just a name, not just a flourish. It belonged to a man of certain lineage, a man whose identity should be known to all the world. She stared at the narrow opening of the door, at the sleeping figure inside, and understood that the stranger she had taken in from the road was not merely a homeless wanderer at all, but a man who, even in dreams, claimed one of the most powerful titles in the region as if it were his own. Bianca slept little that night. When dawn finally came, she was still sitting in the chair by the blue room, shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders, eyes fixed on the narrow crack of the half-open door. Somewhere around sunrise she rose quietly and went back to her own chamber. She changed her dress without calling for a maid, washed her face in cool water, and forced her mind into its usual morning order: breakfast, correspondence, household accounts. But the words he had murmured would not leave her. Marchese di Montelupo. By the time she reached the breakfast room, Marta was already there, directing a maid who was placing bread and a covered dish on the table. Marta turned, studied Bianca's face, and frowned. You did not sleep, she said. Not very well, Bianca admitted. The stranger? Lorenzo, Bianca corrected gently. He remembers that much now. Marta sniffed. Names come easily. It is the rest I am interested in. How is he? I sent a maid early. He was awake. He sat up when she entered and thanked her as if he were in a palace. He apologized that she had to bring breakfast all the way to him. Who on the road speaks like that? Bianca sat, poured coffee for herself, and stared at the dark liquid. He said anything else? Marta pressed. Only that he is grateful, the housekeeper continued, when Bianca did not answer at once. But his head hurts. The maid says he held it in his hands as if it were too heavy. Bianca took a small sip. I will go to him after I have eaten. You will go to him alone. Marta's voice sharpened. This is my house, Bianca said. I will not hide in my own rooms like a girl. Marta pressed her lips together, then sighed. At least leave the door open. And do not say I did not warn you when the village begins to talk. They will talk whatever I do, Bianca answered. If not of this, of something else. It keeps them warm. She forced herself to eat a little, though every bite tasted like dust. When the meal was done, she rose. Send someone to tidy his room after I have spoken with him, she said. And ask Carlo to be ready later. I may go down to the village. For what? Marta asked. To show my face, Bianca replied. If I hide, I will look guilty of something. She left before Marta could answer. The blue room was lighter now. Sun slipped through a thin space between the shutters. Lorenzo sat propped against the headboard, hair damp from a quick wash, dressed in the same worn clothes, though they had been brushed and straightened. He looked up when she entered, and immediately began to push back the blanket. Countess, he said, forgive me. I should not be lying down when you come. Stay where you are, she said. I did not come to inspect you. He hesitated, then relaxed slightly. You look tired, he observed. And you look better, she replied. How do you feel? Less like a ghost, he said. More like a man who has been foolish enough to walk too far with too little food. Your head, it aches, he admitted. But not as much as yesterday. Perhaps the roof and the bed helped. The bed is old, she said, but it has seen worse burdens. He smiled briefly at that. Do you remember anything more? She asked. Lorenzo shook his head slowly. Only that I am grateful to you, and that my name is Lorenzo. It fits. Beyond that there is still fog. Names sometimes fit even when they are borrowed, Bianca remarked. He met her gaze. You do not trust me. I do not know you, she returned. That is fair, he said. She moved closer to the window and opened the shutters a little more. Light filled the room, landing on his face. In clear day, he seemed less like a vagabond and more like a tired gentleman in ruined clothes. There was a neatness in the line of his jaw, a carefulness in the way he held himself even now. When he saw the lake through the window, he grew still. "Ah," he said softly. "You know it?" she asked quickly. He stared at the water, brow furrowing. "It feels unfamiliar. The light, the way it rests on the hills. I have seen this before, or something very much like it." "Many people have seen this," Bianca said, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Lake Como is not exactly a secret." "No," he allowed. "But for me it is more than a landscape. It is like a word on the tip of my tongue. Close, but not quite there." Bianca watched him carefully. "Perhaps it will return in time." "And until then?" he asked. "What will you do with a man who cannot tell you where he came from?" "I will not do anything with you," she replied. "You will rest. When you are stronger, we will find you something decent to wear and send word to the parish priest. He knows many people. Perhaps someone has reported a missing man, perhaps not. We will see." Lorenzo studied her. "You are calmer than I expected." "I am very good at being calm," Bianca said. "It is one of the few talents society approves in a widow." He smiled again, a little sadly. "Then allow me to disturb your calm enough to say thank you, truly. You could have left me outside your gate. You did not. I owe you my life." "You owe me nothing yet," she answered. "We will speak of debts when I know who you are." He hesitated. "And if I never remember?" "Then we will reconsider." She turned to go. "Rest, Lorenzo. That is all I require from you today." She left before he could reply. In the days that followed, the house adjusted to the fact of him. He was not kept hidden exactly. Servants saw him when he walked, then when he sat in the garden, then when he made his way, carefully polite, into the library. At first he stayed in his room, as if unsure of his right to occupy any other space. But Bianca had sent a tailor from the village to see what could be done with a few old suits that had belonged to her late husband's younger brother. With some effort, the tailor cut and stitched one into something that fit Lorenzo's frame more closely. The first time he appeared in the corridor wearing a jacket that was not torn at the sleeves, Marta stared as if he had grown another head. "He looks like a gentleman," she whispered to Bianca later. "He behaves like one," Bianca replied. "It would be strange to dress him like a stable boy." Servants whispered at the kitchen table. The scullery maid swore she had seen him take his hat off when he passed a portrait of the late Count, as if greeting an equal. The footman said Lorenzo apologized for asking where the bookroom was, using a phrase he had once heard only in the city among educated men. When Bianca entered the library one afternoon, expecting to find it empty, she found Lorenzo instead, standing on a ladder, steadying himself with one hand while the other tried to restore a row of heavy volumes to order. "What are you doing?" she asked from the doorway. He looked down and almost lost his balance. "Countess," he said, "forgive me. I should have asked permission. I saw that some of the books had been placed out of sequence, and I could not resist. I have a weakness for tidy shelves." "Do you read Latin?" she asked. "Yes," he said at once, "and French. And some English, I think." He glanced at a spine. "Yes, that is Milton, is it not?" "It is," she said. He smiled with simple delight, then looked embarrassed. "Old habits, perhaps. Books calm me." "Climb down before you break your neck," she ordered. "If you must reorder my library, at least do it from the floor." "Yes, Countess," he said obediently, descending. As he passed her, she caught the faint scent of soap. He had shaved more carefully that morning. With trimmed hair and the altered jacket, he looked like a man who might visit the house for tea, not one who had arrived half collapsing at the gate. They fell into a strange routine. In the mornings, Bianca handled her letters at her desk. Sometimes Lorenzo would be summoned to read a difficult hand or translate a note from a French cousin. He never stumbled. He made quick, precise sense of every line. "You have been well educated," she observed one morning, after he had translated 3 letters in succession. "So it seems," he agreed, with a hint of discomfort. "In what?" she asked. He looked at his hands. "I can parse legal phrases. I know the language of land and contracts. But if you ask me the name of the town where I learned it, I have nothing." "The mind is a strange thing," Bianca said. In the afternoons, when the weather permitted, He walked slowly in the garden, sometimes with a cane Marta insisted he take, though he used it more out of politeness than necessity. Occasionally, Bianca joined him under the pretense of checking on the roses or inspecting the hedges. Their conversations remained cautious, but grew less stiff. "It is curious," Lorenzo remarked once as they paced the gravel path. "I know how to address you. I know the forms. Countess, Signora, Your Excellency, if needed. I know which fork to use at a formal dinner. I know the proper order in which to greet guests from various families. But when I try to remember my own house, my own servants, there is nothing." "Perhaps you were a servant," she suggested, watching him. He laughed softly. "If so, I was a very arrogant one." "Arrogant?" "I have the reflex to give instructions," he said. "I have to stop myself from telling your coachman how to arrange the horses." Bianca smiled despite herself. "Do not. He would never forgive you." Despite the light tone, every one of these details pressed on her mind. The title he had murmured in sleep lingered like a shadow behind every word. Montelupo. She had not spoken it to anyone, not even to Marta. But the servants spoke other things. By the end of the week, half the village knew that the Countess was sheltering a man, and that he was no ordinary labourer. Rumour painted him taller, handsomer, more dangerous, more fragile, depending on who told the story. Some said he was a ruined gentleman, others a runaway tutor. Others still decided he was an invention to explain why the housekeeper had been seen buying extra meat. "They make him grow with every telling," Marta muttered, while slicing bread in the kitchen. "Soon he will be a giant who eats 2 lambs a day." Bianca, hearing this, only said, "Let them talk, they would be lonely without their stories." However, she understood that silence was not an option. Sunday approached. She had not missed Mass since her husband's death. To stay away now would only sharpen tongues. On Sunday morning she dressed more carefully than usual. Her black gown, though simple, was finely cut. Her veil, though modest, was of good lace. She arrived at the church steps with Carlo behind her, hands folded, posture calm. The square was filled with people. Conversations dipped as she passed, then resumed in lower tones. The priest greeted her with warmth, though even his eyes flicked once, briefly, to her left as if he expected someone to stand there. She took her usual place near the front. The service itself was, as always, a solace, familiar prayers, measured chants. But she could feel the curiosity behind her back like a small heat. When it ended, she knelt for a brief extra moment, then rose. Outside the sun was gentle. People gathered in clusters, greeting one another. "Countess?" a voice called. She turned. It was Giulio, her late husband's cousin, a man in his 40s with careful hair and a satisfied air. At his side stood the Marchesa Conti, a woman of similar age, known for her charity and her sharpness. "Cousin?" Bianca said politely. "Marchesa, how good to see you," the Marchesa said with a wide smile. "It has been too long." "Grief prefers quiet," Bianca replied. "Of course," the Marchesa agreed quickly. "But solitude, you know, can be dangerous." Giulio cleared his throat. "We have heard some news, Bianca." "Then the road to my gate is shorter than I thought," Bianca said lightly. "What news?" "That you have taken a man into your house," the Marchesa said, lowering her voice, though not enough. "A stranger, without name or background." "Ah," Bianca said. "Yes, a man collapsed at my gate. I did what any Christian would do. I did not leave him on the road." "Of course," the Marchesa repeated. "Charity is a virtue. No one would question that. But charity must be ordered. It must not give scandal." Giulio nodded gravely. "You are a young widow, Bianca. People watch. They talk. It is not fair, but it is the way of the world." "They talked when I married a man twice my age," Bianca replied. "Talking is, as you say, the way of the world." The Marchesa gave a tight little laugh, still as sharp as ever. "But listen, my dear, a man under your roof, unknown to anyone, is unusual. If you wish to help him, there are ways. You could pay for a room at the inn. You could ask the priest to find him a place, to keep him in your house served by your maids." She let the rest hang in the air. Bianca felt her cheeks warm. She kept her chin steady. "The man is weak," she said. "He needed rest." "And now?" Giulio asked. "He walks, they say. He breathes fresh air in your garden. He wears your late brother-in-law's jackets. Are you planning to keep him like that? Giulio, she said, I do not recall asking for your permission on how to treat guests. I am thinking of you, he protested. Of your name, of my cousin's memory. People are quick to judge. Already there are whispers. It would ease everything if you were to place this man elsewhere. Ordesa, the Marchesa added sweetly, if you were to consider a more suitable arrangement. A marriage, for instance, to someone whose standing would protect you from such stories. There is a gentleman, Giulio said eagerly, a widower himself, respectable, mild, with an estate not far from Milan. He has asked about you before. With the right encouragement. Bianca cut him off. Enough, she said quietly. I see that your concern is tender, but I am not a girl waiting to be chosen. I am the mistress of my own house. I decide who enters it. And if people say you share it with a man you do not know, the Marchesa pressed. They already say it, Bianca answered. Whether it is true or not, I cannot spend my life running after their tongues with a broom. But you could avoid placing yourself in their way, Giulio insisted. Bianca looked from one to the other. Their faces were sympathetic, worried, nearly kind. But beneath it she felt the judgment, the little flame of satisfaction that came from being able to instruct her. She smiled, though it cost her. Thank you for your advice, she said. I will consider all you have said. Good, Giulio replied, reassured. You are sensible, Bianca. You always were. If you say so, she said. With that, she inclined her head and turned away. As she walked back to her carriage, she could feel glances on her back. Two young women whispered behind gloved hands. A man she knew slightly nodded but did not come forward as he once might have. She kept her stride even. In the carriage, Carlo cast her a careful look in the small mirror. Back to the palazzo, Countess, he asked. Yes, she said. She held herself upright all the way home. Only when she stepped into the quiet of the hall did her shoulders sag for a moment. Marta appeared almost at once. Well, she asked. Well, what? Bianca replied. The village, Marta said. The church. The looks. Bianca took off her gloves one finger at a time. Oh, there were looks. And words? Many. Most of them were given soft shapes, so that they could pretend they were not exactly what they were. Marta's mouth tightened. I told you. You did, Bianca admitted. And you were right. They do not like their widows unpredictable. Will you send him away? Marta asked bluntly. Bianca paused, glove half pulled. Would you? She asked. I am only a housekeeper, Marta said. I keep your walls standing and your sheets aired. I do not decide who sleeps in the beds. Many housekeepers decide more than their employers think, Bianca replied. Marta hesitated. The man is not rude, she said reluctantly. He says please and thank you more than some gentlemen. He does not speak improperly to the maids. When he passes them on the stairs, he steps aside first. I have nothing against him as a person. It is the tongues outside I fear, not his hands. And you think sending him away would stop those tongues? No, Marta admitted. They would simply change the story, but perhaps they would grow tired more quickly. Bianca slipped off the second glove. I will not turn him out, she said. Not yet. He is still recovering. When he is strong enough, we will decide together what is to be done. Marta sighed. Then I will pray that the villagers find a new distraction. So will I, Bianca said. That afternoon she retreated to the small sitting room with a book. The words moved but would not settle. At last she set it aside and went to the library. Lorenzo was there, seated at the large table, a newspaper spread before him. The tailor had done better with the second jacket. This one fit more comfortably, though it still bore traces of its previous owner's shape. He rose when she entered. Countess, he said, I was about to bring this to you. The newspaper? She asked. You may leave it. There is a notice, he said. A piece I thought you might wish to see. It concerns a concert in Milan. There is talk of new patronage for... He stopped. His eyes had fallen to a small section near the bottom of the page. The blood drained from his face. Lorenzo? She asked. He did not answer. His hand tightened on the paper until it crumpled. She crossed the room quickly. What is it? She demanded. He looked up at her, bewildered. This, he said, barely above a whisper. She took the paper, smoothed the page. There, in a column about society events, she saw the name. Yesterday evening, the Marchese di Montelupo received a distinguished company at his residence in Milan. The words blurred slightly as she read details of the guests, the wines, the music. At the top of the column, a small illustration showed the Montelupo coat of arms, a stylized hill and wolf, arranged in a familiar pattern. Bianca felt Lorenzo step closer to her shoulder. His breath was uneven. "The crest," he said. "I know it. Not with my eyes. I know it with my bones." "You spoke that title in your sleep," she said quietly. "Do you remember?" He closed his eyes briefly. "Yes. Do you know this man?" She pointed to the name of the current Marchese, printed in clear black letters. He swallowed. "I should. I do. But the name, it slides away. I see a face in shadow, a voice saying, 'You must trust me. It is better this way.'" He pressed his hand to his temple. "Sit down," Bianca ordered. He obeyed, dropping into the nearest chair. She set the paper on the table and sat across from him. "Tell me everything," she said. "Even if it sounds foolish, every fragment." He stared at his hands. "There is a house, not unlike yours, but larger. Old stone. A long drive. I have walked it many times. Trees on either side. At the door, a man waits with a bundle of papers. He hands them to me. He calls me Signore. Sometimes Signor Marchese. Oh, not always, but sometimes. Enough that it feels natural. I correct him once. He laughs and says, 'You will have to grow used to it.'" Bianca's heart beat faster. "Go on," she said. "There are lessons," he continued slowly. "Not the lessons of a boy in a village school. Lessons in how to read contracts, how to speak to tenants, how to listen to a lawyer without being deceived. An older man with spectacles drills me. 'You must understand,' he says, 'for when you are master you will sign and your signature will move more than ink.'" He lifted his eyes. "I can smell the ink, hear the scratch. I can see my own hand, younger, holding the pen." "Do you remember your family?" she asked. "A father," he said. "Not in all the details of his face, but in presence. He smells of tobacco. He has a steady voice. When he puts his hand on my shoulder, I feel safe." "And your mother?" Silence stretched. Then he shook his head. "Nothing. Or perhaps I lost her earlier. I only know that the house felt gentler when I was a child and more severe as I grew." "Anyone else?" she pressed. "A man," he said. "Younger than my father, older than me. He comes often. At first he smiles. He tells stories, makes jokes, speaks of the city. Later his visits grow more serious. He talks with my father in a room with the door half closed. I hear pieces. Fragile health. Too soon. Responsibilities. I am not meant to listen, but I do." Bianca felt that everything in the room had narrowed to his voice. "Later still," he said, "the house changes. The older man with spectacles begins to look at me differently. He repeats lessons. He speaks slower, as if to someone simple. My father seems worried. The other man says he needs rest. All this study and pressure. It is not good for him. There is talk of a retreat, a place in the country, quiet, where I am to recover. I do not feel ill. I feel confused, but they tell me that confusion is a symptom, that if I do not rest I may become worse. I begin to doubt myself." His hands clenched. "Then," Bianca whispered, "then there is the road," he said. "And nothing. Fog. Until I stood at your gate." Bianca let out a slow breath. "You think," she said carefully, "that you are this Marchese, or were meant to be." "I think," he answered, "that I was prepared to be. That I lived in that house, walked those halls, was taught to carry that title, and now someone else holds it. Many families send their heirs for rest," she said. "It is not unheard of. Do they forget them there?" he asked quietly. "Do they never bring them back?" She did not answer. He looked at the newspaper again, at the printed coat of arms. "I could be wrong," he said. "I could be inventing all this to satisfy my pride. A man without memory will grasp at anything that makes him feel important. And yet," she said slowly, "the way you hold a fork, the way you address people, the languages you speak, the things you know, they do not come from nowhere." He gave a bitter little smile. "So I am either a nobleman or a thief of noble habits." "I doubt you have stolen anything," she said. Then consider the other option, he replied. If I am indeed who I think I am, then someone preferred me out of the way, and someone else was placed in my place. He fell silent. Bianca thought of the Marchese's name printed there, of dinners long ago in Milan, where she had seen a man at the head of a table, speaking with easy authority. At the time, she had not paid much attention. She had been a young wife told whom to greet, where to sit, but the name was not strange to her. "What do you intend to do?" she asked. He laughed softly. "I? Nothing." "With what? A half-remembered past and a jacket that does not belong to me? I cannot walk into that house and say, 'Move aside, I have returned.' They would call for a doctor, not a lawyer." "Perhaps there is a way," she began. He shook his head. "Without proof, without even a family name I can swear to, it would be my word against the world's comfort." Silence sat between them for a moment. "Countess," he said at last, voice lower, "there is something else you must consider." "What is that?" she asked. "If I am right," he said, "and someone chose to send me away, then they had much to gain from my absence. They will not want this question raised again." "There is no question yet," she said quickly. "We are only speaking." "But papers travel," he said, nodding toward the newspaper. "Servants talk. If anyone learns that a nameless man has appeared in your house, speaking of that crest, remembering that title, they will not shrug and say, 'How curious.' They will be afraid. And people who are afraid can be inventive." "Inventive?" she repeated. "They can declare me a lunatic," he said. "They can say I escaped from a place of treatment. They can accuse me of imposture, of seeking to profit from a respectable name. And because I am in your house, they can drag you into it. They can say you encouraged me, that you helped me, that you kept me for reasons that have nothing to do with charity." Bianca felt a chill run through her that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. "You think they would go that far?" she asked. "If they have already rewritten my life once," he said quietly, "why would they hesitate to rewrite yours as well? If they discover I am here and that you believe me, they will not rest until they have destroyed your name along with mine." For a long moment, Bianca said nothing. The words Lorenzo had just spoken lingered between them, heavy as the stone walls around them. "If they discover I am here and that you believe me," he had said, "they will not rest until they have destroyed your name along with mine." She looked at him across the library table. The newspaper lay between them, the ink on the Montelupo crest still fresh. "You exaggerate," she said at last, though her voice lacked conviction. "I do not think so," he answered quietly. "If a man gains everything by my disappearance, he cannot welcome my return. And if he learns that a respected woman has offered me shelter and listens to my memories, he will see you as an obstacle. Obstacles, in such circles, are not left standing." "You are speaking of social games," she replied. "Not war." "In certain houses," Lorenzo said, "they are the same thing, only waged with different weapons." Bianca's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. "And what do you suggest?" she asked. "That I throw you out of my house at once to save my reputation." "No," he said, "I suggest nothing for now. I only warn you that if we choose to pursue this, it will not be a small matter. You will not be able to say later that you did not know." "We," she repeated softly. "Forgive me," he said at once. You will choose. It is your house, your life. I have already lost mine once. I would not have you lose yours for my sake." She studied him. "You care about that." "Of course I do," he said almost sharply. "Do you think I enjoy the thought that my presence brings gossip to your door? I hear the servants whispering. I see the way their eyes flick to me when you enter a room now. I would be blind not to notice." Bianca rose abruptly. "I must think," she said. "Read your newspapers, Lorenzo. Put my books in better order. For today, that is enough." She left before he could answer. In the days that followed, what he had predicted began to unfold. The first sign came in a small, neat envelope bearing the crest of a family in Como. Bianca had been invited months earlier to a musical evening there. The hostess, a kindly woman who had once praised Bianca's taste in music, now sent a note written in careful, apologetic phrases. Illness in the family, numbers reduced, the need to limit guests. "I understand," Bianca murmured as she set the letter aside. But she understood more than the words said. 2 days later, she heard from Marta that another lady had been overheard saying, "It is better not to invite the Countess just now." One never knows who she may bring with her. A week later, a merchant in the village, who had always bowed deeply when she purchased cloth or spices, greeted her with less warmth than usual. His wife, standing beside him, gave a shallow curtsy and looked away too quickly. Carlo noticed it as he held the door of the carriage. "They are fools," he muttered once they were moving. "Who?" Bianca asked. "Them," he said vaguely. "Everyone. You have done nothing wrong." "Nothing people can see," she replied. At home, the servants were outwardly respectful, but there was a new tone in the kitchen. Bianca heard snatches of conversation when doors were left ajar, and she spoke to him in the garden as if he were— "Well, they say he was sleeping in the east wing, and you know those rooms. Marta says sir to him now. Did you hear?" Marta did her best to keep discipline, but even she could not stop the stories carried from one house to another in the village. One afternoon, the parish priest came to call. He was a gentleman in his 60s who had baptized children, blessed marriages, and buried Bianca's husband. "Countess," he said, taking the tea she offered, "I have come to speak as a pastor." "Not as a judge?" she asked. "As a worried friend," he replied. She smiled faintly. "Very well. Say what you must." He cleared his throat. "It has come to my ears that you have taken into your home a man of unknown origin." "It is not a secret," she said. "I did not hide him under the floor." "A figure of speech," the priest said. "You are a charitable soul, madam. But the world is not always kind to charity when it does not understand it." "Then the world may remain confused," she said coolly. He set down his cup. "Forgive me. I must be direct. People are saying unfortunate things. They speak of impropriety. They question your prudence. Some have even asked whether I have warned you." "Warned me of what?" she asked. "Of the danger of giving a man soup and a bed. Of giving him your roof for so long," the priest replied. "Of allowing him to walk your halls. It is not only your own name, Countess. There are young maids in your service. People worry. It would ease many doubts if this man were placed in a more neutral setting." "At the inn," she said. "Yes," the priest said. "Or in a room in the village, paid for by your kindness. Then no one could say that you had done wrong, and your generosity would still be known." "And Lorenzo?" she asked. The priest blinked. "Lorenzo? That is his name," she said. "He may not remember the rest, but he remembers that much. Would it ease his mind to be thrust out of the one place where he has felt safe since he woke on the road?" The priest hesitated. "I must think of your soul, Countess." "And who thinks of his?" she asked softly. "He is a man," the priest said a little helplessly. "Yes," she answered. "And I am a woman, so I must draw my curtains when I have done something decent. Is that it?" He flushed, then mastered himself. "I speak only of appearances." "I know," she replied. "Appearances are everything. Truth is something we discuss only when the door is closed." The priest sighed. "If the whispers grow louder, they may hurt you. I do not wish that." "I know you do not," she said more gently, "and I thank you for the warning, but I will not send him away today. When he is stronger, we will see. Until then, I ask you only this. If anyone comes to you with stories, remind them that God has welcomed many strangers under his roof." The priest studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I will remind them," he said, "and I will pray for both of you." When he had gone, Bianca stood alone in the hall, feeling as if the walls themselves were whispering. That evening, Lorenzo did not appear at dinner. She sent a maid to call him. The maid returned, saying his room was empty. "He is not in the garden," Marta reported, hurrying in. "He is not in the library. Carlo has not seen him. Where could he have gone?" Bianca did not answer. A hollow feeling spread in her chest. She went up the stairs herself. The blue room door was open. On the bed lay the clothes he had worn the first day, folded with care. On the small table lay the book he had been reading, its place marked by a scrap of paper. On the chair, his altered jacket was gone. "He is leaving," she said. She turned and went back down at once. Marta hurried after her. "Leaving?" the housekeeper repeated. "How? The gates—" But when they reached the hall, the front door stood unlocked. Beyond it, the last light of day was fading over the gravel. Bianca stepped outside. The air was cool. She saw a shadow moving near the side of the house. "Lorenzo!" she called. The shadow froze, then slowly straightened. He emerged from behind the hedge, carrying a small bundle tied in a cloth. He wore the jacket the tailor had adjusted, but no hat. "Countess," he said, startled, "I did not mean to disturb." "Where are you going?" she demanded. He held her gaze for a moment, then looked down. "Away," he said simply. "You have done enough. Too much. It is time I stop repaying your kindness with trouble." "Running will not silence tongues," she said. "It will only give them fresh stories." "Perhaps," he answered, "but at least they will not have you at the center of them. They will say, 'The strange fellow came and went, and now she is alone again.' People forget. It is their favorite pastime." "You are still weak," she said. "You have no money." "I am stronger than when I came," he replied. "I can walk. I will find work. There is always need of a man who can write a decent letter." "In what name?" she asked sharply. "Lorenzo." "Lorenzo who?" "The world does not pay much for a signature without a surname." He smiled a little. "I will earn my bread somehow. I did not come here to be a weight upon you for the rest of my days." "You did not come here at all," she said. "You were brought by your own feet and your own confusion. And now you think you may walk away and leave all the confusion behind you? It will follow you wherever you go." "At least it will not sit at your table," he said. She took a step closer. "Do you think I opened my door to spare myself trouble?" she asked. "I think you opened it because you could not see someone fall and do nothing," he said. "That kind of heart does not deserve to be dragged through scandal and suspicion. I heard what the priest said when he left. His voice carries. I know what your cousin suggested. I am not deaf. Every time you defend my presence, you lose a little more peace." "You listen at doors?" she asked. "I listen at keyholes of the air," he said. "Words travel. I cannot shut my ears when they carry your name." He adjusted his bundle. "This is the simplest solution," he said. "I go, you stay. They will forget me in a week. In a month, they will pretend they pitied you for being so easily misled. In a year, they will have a new story. You will be safe. And you?" she asked. He gave a slight shrug. "I will do as others have done before me," he said. "Walk until I find a place where my face is new and my past does not matter." Something inside her snapped at that. "Do not speak as if your life were a discarded coat," she said. "You are not a ghost, Lorenzo. You are a man with a past someone has tried to erase. You may accept it if you wish. I will not." He looked up, surprised. "Why?" he asked softly. "Why does it matter so much to you? You did not know me before that night. I am nothing to you." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The words felt too large for her throat. "You filled my house," she said finally. "Is that a small thing? For years I have walked these corridors hearing only my own steps. I have taken my meals in silence. I have spoken more to portraits than to people. Then you arrived, and suddenly there is conversation, laughter even sometimes, a voice at the table, books being read aloud. It is different. That is loneliness speaking," he said gently. "Not reason. Loneliness has its own reason," she replied. "If you leave now, you will not only take your troubles with you, you will leave something broken behind. Do you want that?" He stared at her bundle, then slowly lowered it to the ground. "I do not wish to hurt you," he said. "Then stay," she answered. "I am dangerous to you," he said. "Not with my hands, with my history, with my questions, with the name I may carry. The more we speak of it, the more peril grows around you. I have lived many years under the illusion that silence keeps one safe," she said. "It does not. It simply makes one invisible. I am tired of being invisible, Lorenzo. If I am to face the world's scorn, I would rather it be for having done something than for having lived like a shadow." His expression softened. "You are braver than I am," he said. "I doubt that very much," she replied. He studied her a moment longer, then nodded. "Very well," he said. "I will stay, but only on one condition." Her heart gave an irritated lurch. "You dare set conditions in my own house?" "I dare because this concerns you more than me," he said. "If we are to ask questions about my past, we must do it properly. We cannot whisper in corners and hope the truth knocks politely on your door." "What do you suggest?" she asked. "We must go to it," he said simply. She frowned. "To what? To whom?" "To those who keep records," he replied. "To those who recognize the title of Montelupo long before you and I spoke its name in this room." To those who can say whether there is a place in their documents where a man of my description should stand and does not. You mean? She trailed off. I mean, he said, we must go to Milan, to the city, to the council, to the lawyers who oversee noble estates. I cannot present myself as a madman from the road. They will send me away at once. I need someone whose name still means something to introduce me, someone whose word carries weight, someone who can say, this man may be what he says he is. Hear him. She understood at once what he meant. No, she said. He had been calm. Now he looked almost startled. You do not know what I was going to ask, he protested. Yes, I do, she said. You want me to stand beside you in front of them, to lend you my name, to say that I, Bianca di Lazzaro, believe you. Yes, he said quietly. That is exactly what I want. Do you know what they will say? She demanded. That I have lost my senses, that I am led by sentiment, that I have been enchanted by a stranger. They will laugh. Let them laugh, he said. They will not stop at laughter, she replied. They will whisper worse. They already say you are my... Her face heated. She could not finish. I know what they say, he answered calmly. But their words do not change the truth. We are not what they imagine. You took me in when I was half fainting at your gate. There is honor in that, not shame. Honor is easily mocked, she said bitterly. But not forever, he replied. In the end, if we are right, the facts will stand. And if we are wrong, she cut in, I will have dragged myself into ridicule for no reason. Is that what you offer me? No, he said. That is what I fear, which is why I do not ask this lightly. He took a breath. There is another way, he continued. A stronger one that would make it more difficult for them to dismiss me as a passing case or to treat your support as mere fancy. It is more risky for you. She stared at him. Speak clearly, she said. Do not dance around it. He looked straight into her eyes. If you were to present me not merely as a guest, he said slowly, but as a man under your protection in a more formal sense, they could not ignore me. If you were to announce that you are engaged to me, even provisionally, they would have to listen. Engaged, she repeated, as if testing a strange foreign word. Yes, he said, an engagement of convenience, as they say, a promise that could be reconsidered later if needed. On paper, it would give me standing. People would see me not as a nameless wanderer, but as the intended husband of Bianca di Lazzaro, widow of a respected count. They would have to treat my words with some seriousness. Your invitation to be heard would not be refused. She laughed once, a sound halfway to outrage. Do you hear yourself? She asked. You suggest that I put my hand in yours and tell the world I intend to marry a man who cannot tell me the name of his childhood dog. I know how it sounds, he said. I would not propose it if I saw another path. There must be another, she insisted. Perhaps, he conceded, but I have thought on it many nights, alone, in that room, turning every possibility over. Without a name, I am nothing. With a name only in my own mind, I am a curiosity at best, a nuisance at worst. With your name beside mine, I become someone who must be answered. And what of me? She asked quietly. What do I become? He swallowed. A woman who has either made a grave mistake, he said, or been extraordinarily courageous. You forget another option, she added. A woman everyone believes has taken a lover into her house and then decided to give him her fortune. He flinched. I would never touch your fortune, he said quickly. The world will not believe that, she replied. They will say I have been deceived. They will say you have charmed me. They will say I am foolish. Then say no, he said. I will not blame you. Silence fell. He bent to pick up his bundle. You asked me to stay, he said. I will honor that, with or without this mad plan. I can find work in the village under any name. I can disappear quietly. You need not tie yourself to me to keep me alive. She watched him straighten again. You ask me to bind my name to yours, she said slowly, so that you may recover the one that was taken from you. Yes, he admitted. And if after all this you are recognized as the Marchese, or as someone else of rank, she continued, what then? You will thank me politely, bow, and walk into that life, leaving me with the label of foolish widow who almost married an uncertainty. His jaw tightened. If that is what you wish, he said. "I will accept your decision, but it is not what I would choose." "What would you choose?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. He hesitated, then spoke very quietly. "I would choose to be worthy of you," he said, "not only as a claimant to some title, but as a man. I did not expect this, these feelings. They came while we were speaking of books and letters and gardens. I am not proud of them, because they complicate everything. But they are there. If I ask anything of you now, it is not because I see you as a convenient shield. It is because you are the only person in this world who has seen me as more than a question mark." Her breath caught. She looked away toward the dark line of the trees. "I cannot answer you now," she said. "My head is full of voices. The priest, my cousin, the marchesa, Marta, the servants." "I understand," he said. "Take all the time you need." "There is no time," she replied. "If we move, we must move quickly. News travels. If the man who carries your title hears that a stranger has begun to speak in your name, he may act first." He nodded once. "Then we will decide soon," he said. The decision, when it came, was not announced with trumpets. It arrived in the form of a signed letter and a quiet conversation. Bianca wrote to a lawyer in Milan who had once handled matters for her husband's estate. In calm, measured phrases, she informed him that she wished to register her intention to enter into a future marriage with a gentleman named Lorenzo, currently residing under her roof. "He is of uncertain background," she wrote, "but I am satisfied with his character. There are questions regarding his family that may require clarification through formal channels. I trust your discretion." She showed the letter to Lorenzo before sealing it. "Are you certain?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I am decided." The lawyer replied within a week. His handwriting, always precise, carried a new tension. "Dear Countess," he wrote, "for reasons of propriety, I must ask that you present yourself and this gentleman in person at my office. There are implications in so unusual a match. Moreover, your description of his situation touches upon matters that may fall under the jurisdiction of the Noble Council. If you wish to pursue clarification, a hearing may be arranged." She read the letter aloud to Lorenzo. "A hearing," he said. "That is more than I hoped for." "It is something," she replied. Preparations were made quietly. Marta supervised the packing with tight lips and many sighs. She never said the word engagement, but she polished the small ring Bianca had once worn as a girl and placed it in a velvet box beside the Countess's gloves. "Just in case," she murmured. Carlo prepared the carriage. The servants watched from windows as trunks were loaded. "Will you be gone long?" one maid dared to ask. "As long as necessary," Bianca replied. On the morning of their departure, Lorenzo descended the staircase in a dark coat that fit him almost perfectly now. The tailor had done his work. He looked, Bianca thought uneasily, exactly like what people would expect of a man engaged to a countess. Marta adjusted Bianca's veil with nervous hands. "You can still change your mind," the housekeeper whispered. "I know," Bianca said, "but I will not." They drove to Milan with little conversation. The town gave way to open road, then to the growing hints of the city. More carriages, wider streets, taller houses. Lorenzo watched it all with a strange expression, as if walking through a dream half-remembered. At last the carriage drew up before a sober stone building near the heart of the city. It was not grand, but its doors and windows spoke of confidence and order. Carlo jumped down, opened the door and offered a hand. Bianca took it, then stepped onto the pavement. Lorenzo alighted beside her. A few passers-by glanced their way, curious. Ahead, at the top of a short flight of steps, two clerks stood by the entrance checking a list. "That must be the place," Lorenzo said. Bianca's heart beat hard, but her voice was steady. "Are you ready?" she asked. "No," he answered softly. "But I am willing." They climbed the steps together. The clerks watched them approach, eyes flicking from Bianca's veil to Lorenzo's face. "Name?" one of them asked. "Countess Bianca di Lazzaro," she said. With my fiancé, Signor Lorenzo." The clerk's brows lifted almost imperceptibly. He checked his list, then nodded. "You are expected," he said. "The council has agreed to hear your request. Please enter." He opened the heavy door. As they stepped over the threshold, a murmur rose from within the hall. Faces turned. Some recognized Bianca, Others looked at Lorenzo with open curiosity. Her man in a dark robe at the far end called out in a carrying voice, "The Countess Bianca di Lazzaro and Signor Lorenzo, presenting a matter concerning the title of Montelupo." Bianca felt the weight of every gaze press upon her as the great inner doors began to swing closed behind them. The council chamber was high-ceilinged, but surprisingly bare. A long table dominated the center of the room. Behind it sat several men in dark coats, papers neatly arranged before them. To one side, like a spectator given an important chair, sat a man Bianca recognized dimly from dinners years ago, the current Marchese di Montelupo. Her lawyer, Signor Rinaldi, met them at the entrance and bowed. "Countess," he said, "Signor Lorenzo, I thank you for your punctuality." Bianca inclined her head. Lorenzo merely nodded. She could see the tension in his shoulders. "May I ask," Lorenzo murmured to Rinaldi, "whether I am to be treated as an accused criminal or a petitioner today?" "As neither," Rinaldi replied quietly. "You are here as a man asking that his identity be clarified. The council has no interest in punishing anyone, only in preventing confusion." "That sounds very noble," Lorenzo said. "It also sounds very legal," Bianca added. "Which is, I suppose, what we need." Rinaldi gave a brief smile. "Stay close. Answer only what you are asked. Do not guess unless you must." They approached the table. One of the men at the center, older, with careful grey hair, cleared his throat. "Countess Bianca di Lazzaro," he said. "Signor Lorenzo, please, be seated." 2 chairs had been placed opposite the council. Bianca and Lorenzo sat. She could feel eyes on her from every direction. The presiding councillor glanced at a sheet of paper. "We are gathered for an unusual matter," he said. "The Countess has requested that we hear a claim relating to the title of Montelupo and to the person of the current Marchese." His gaze moved to the man on the side chair, who remained composed, if slightly stiff. "We have agreed to listen, not because we anticipate upheaval, but because it is our duty to ensure the integrity of noble estates under our oversight." Bianca felt her throat tighten. She kept her hands clasped in her lap. "You are aware," the councillor continued, "that false claims in such matters can bring serious consequences upon those who present them." "I am aware," she said calmly. "And yet you have chosen to come forward," he said. "Why?" "Because I have reason to believe that the man at my side is not what he appears to be," she answered. "Or rather, that he is more." "We will ask you to explain in due course," the councillor said. He turned to Lorenzo. "First, however, we must establish basic facts." Lorenzo sat straight, his gaze steady. "You present yourself as Lorenzo," the councillor said. "Do you have a family name?" Lorenzo shook his head. "Not one I can swear to with certainty, Excellency, only fragments." "Do you recall where you were born?" "No." "Do you recall who your parents were?" "I recall a father," Lorenzo said, "but not with a name or a clear face. Only with a voice, a manner, a presence. I recall lessons given in his house for my sake. But I cannot say in what town that house stood. Yet according to the petition submitted," the councillor said, "you have suggested that you may be the rightful bearer of the title Marchese di Montelupo." Lorenzo swallowed. "I did not come here to tear anything from another man's hands. I came because my own life does not fit. I have memories that match no name, and a name that matches no records. When I saw the Montelupo crest and read the title in the newspaper, I felt something inside me stand up and answer. I cannot explain it better than that." "That is not much on which to base a legal claim," another councillor commented dryly. "No," Lorenzo agreed, "which is why I did not come straight to you from the road. I would not ask to be heard if I had nothing more than a feeling. But there are details. They may be nothing. They may be everything." "Then let us hear them," the presiding councillor said. "Tell us what you remember." Lorenzo spoke. He described the house, its long drive lined with trees, the way the sun fell at a certain angle on the east wing each morning. He spoke of the tutor with spectacles, of lessons in contracts and signatures. He spoke of the man who visited often, younger than his father, older than himself, sometimes jovial, sometimes serious. He spoke of phrases half heard, fragile health, too much pressure, a retreat for his own good. The councillors listened without interrupting. Their faces gave nothing away. The current Marchese watched him with an expression Bianca could not read. "And after this supposed retreat?" one of the councillors asked. "Nothing," Lorenzo said simply. "I remember a road, cold, confusion, then the Countess's gate. The years in between are missing, as if someone had cut them from the page." The presiding councillor steepled his fingers. "Tell me, Signor Lorenzo, if we were to take you eyes closed into the Montelupo residence in the city, would you be able to find your way?" "I do not know," Lorenzo admitted. "Perhaps, or perhaps the fog in my mind would thicken when I tried." "Convenient," another man muttered. Bianca bristled. "He has not asked to be convenient," she said. "He has asked to be understandable." The presiding councillor raised a hand. "Please, Countess, we are not here to mock. We are here to test. The question is whether the details he has given match anything we know." He turned slightly. "Signor Bellini, if you would." A thin man with spectacles, seated at the back of the room, rose. Bianca had not noticed him before. "Present yourself," the councillor said. "I am Carlo Bellini," the man replied. "For many years I was employed as a tutor in the House of Montelupo. I instructed the young heir in matters of letters, languages, and estate management." Bianca's heart sped up. "You heard this man's description of his lessons," the councillor said. "Did it correspond with your methods?" Bellini adjusted his spectacles and peered at Lorenzo. "In its outline, yes," he said slowly. "I did indeed stress practical matters. Many young gentlemen know poetry, and nothing of rents. I tried to correct that. I drilled him in contracts, wills, and obligations. I used phrases, yes, that one, about signatures moving more than ink. I recall saying that." "You are certain?" the councillor asked. "The words are mine," Bellini said. "In any case, I doubt they are common in other households." "And the house itself?" the councillor asked. "The drive, the trees, the wings." "That could be known to many," Bellini answered. "Servants, visitors. I will not pretend only the heir saw them." "Do you recognize this man?" the councillor asked directly. Bellini studied Lorenzo for a long moment. "At first glance, no," he said. "Time changes a face, but there are gestures. The way he holds his shoulders, the way he turns his head slightly when he is thinking, the way his hand drifts to his temple when he recalls something difficult. These are familiar, very familiar." "And his voice?" the councillor pressed. "The tone is lower," Bellini said. "But the cadence, the choice of words, I could almost believe I am hearing my former pupil speak as a man." The room seemed to hold its breath. "Almost," one councillor repeated. "I cannot swear to it," Bellini said honestly. "I am a teacher, not a judge. But if you ask whether this man's manner matches the boy I taught, I must say yes. Painfully so." The current Marchese shifted in his chair. His jaw tightened. "Thank you," the presiding councillor said. "You may sit." Bellini obeyed and sank back into his seat, looking unexpectedly shaken. "Now," the councillor continued, "we must consider documents." He nodded to Rinaldi. "You brought something for us," he said. "A sealed letter from the late Marchese." "Yes," Rinaldi answered, rising. "Years ago, after the death of the previous holder of the title, there was concern, voiced quietly, about the fragility of the young heir. The late Marchese deposited with my office a private letter, not a will, but a statement of intention and reflection. He asked, should there ever be confusion, that it be produced, but only in the presence of the family and this council." "You have kept it sealed?" the councillor asked. "I have," Rinaldi said, "until this morning." He placed an envelope on the table. The wax bore the Montelupo seal, unbroken, until a clerk had carefully slit it earlier. "We have already read it," the presiding councillor said. "For the purposes of this session, I will summarize its relevant points." He opened a folder and read aloud, not the entire text, but selected phrases. "My son," he began, "your future will be heavier than your youth now understands. Bellini will insist you understand the law before he allows you near a signature. Your cousin, Carlo," his eyes flicked to the current Marchese, "is a capable man, but it is you who must inherit. He knows this and has promised to support you." The current Marchese's brows drew together. "There is more," the councillor said. "If illness ever clouds your mind, or if doctors suggest a retreat, know that this is a temporary measure, not an excuse to remove you from your place. Your birthright is not a garment that can be passed to another because it suits him better. He closed the folder. The letter contains no direct accusation, he said, but it establishes two things clearly: that the late Marchese considered his son the only rightful heir, and that he saw the cousin, now present as the current Marchese, as a support, not a replacement. A murmur ran through the room. The councillor turned to the current Marchese. "Signor Carlo di Montelupo," he said, "you have held this title for some years." "Yes," Carlo replied. His voice was calm, but his fingers gripped the arms of his chair. "How did you come to do so?" the councillor asked. Carlo drew a breath. "After my uncle's death," he said, "there was concern about my cousin. He had suffered from confusion, spells of forgetfulness, irrational fears. Doctors recommended that he be taken to a quiet place for rest. My aunt was fragile. She could not manage alone. Lawyers were consulted. It was decided that for the sake of the estate, someone must sign documents and receive tenants. I was the logical choice. The boy was deemed unfit." "Was there a formal declaration of incapacity?" the councillor asked. "There were medical opinions," Carlo said. "They spoke of instability, vulnerability. I did not seek the title, Excellency. It was placed in my hands. I believed it was my duty to accept for the sake of the name." "And after your cousin was sent away," the councillor asked, "did you ever receive word of him?" "We were told he was under care," Carlo said. "We were told he did not improve, that visits would agitate him, that he grew more withdrawn. Eventually there were fewer reports. I assumed—" He paused. "I assumed the worst." "So you believed him dead?" the councillor said. "Yes," Carlo answered quietly. "I mourned him as such." He looked at Lorenzo with an expression that was not hostile now, but deeply unsettled. "If he is my cousin," Carlo said slowly, "then I have been living a life that belongs to him. If he is not, then someone has played a very cruel game. The question before us," the presiding councillor said, "is whether the man calling himself Lorenzo may reasonably be considered the missing heir." He turned to Bianca. "Countess," he said, "you have placed your own name in support of his. Why?" She met his gaze. "When I found him, he had nothing," she said. "No coat, no past, no coin. Yet he spoke as no beggar does, and carried himself as no impostor I have ever seen. Over weeks I have watched him. He never forgets to thank a servant. He knows the language of contracts better than some who sit here. He recognized the coat of arms of Montelupo before he knew why it mattered. I cannot bring you a birth certificate. I can only tell you that if this man is not of noble blood, then nobility means less than I thought." "Your words carry weight, Countess," the councillor said, "but they cannot replace documents." "Documents," she said, "can be forged. A man's character is harder to counterfeit." A faint stir ran along the council table. Rinaldi hid a small smile. The presiding councillor conferred quietly with his colleagues, then nodded. "We have heard enough to deliberate," he said. "You will withdraw to the antechamber while we consider. When we have reached a decision, you will be called." They rose. Lorenzo's leg wobbled slightly. Bianca touched his arm for balance. He looked at her and managed a brief, grateful nod. In the antechamber, the silence was heavier than any argument. Rinaldi stood near the window, looking out at the crowded street. Lorenzo paced once, twice, then stopped and pressed his forehead to the cool wall. "If they say no," he said, "at least we will know we tried." "If they say yes," Bianca replied, "everything changes." "For you as well," he said. "Yes," she admitted. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly, "standing beside me in there?" She thought of the council's faces, of the Marchese's eyes, of Bellini's trembling hands. "No," she said. "I am only tired." Before he could answer, the door opened. A clerk appeared. "The council is ready," he said. They returned to the chamber. Everyone resumed their seats. The presiding councillor looked at them all in turn. "After hearing testimony," he said, "and reviewing documents, we have reached a conclusion." Bianca felt her heart hammering in her chest. She forced herself to breathe evenly. "The evidence is incomplete," the councillor went on. "There is no direct written statement naming this man as the heir. Yet the combination of factors, the tutor's recognition of manner and memory, the contents of the late Marchese's letter, the medical opinion's vague nature, and the absence of any formal declaration of permanent incapacity lead us to believe that a grave error has occurred. He turned to Lorenzo. "We do not consider you an impostor, Signor Lorenzo," he said. "We consider it highly probable that you are in fact the son of the late Marchese and the heir originally intended to bear the title." Lorenzo closed his eyes briefly. "And I?" Carlo asked quietly. "What, in your view, have I been?" "A steward who became accustomed to being master," the councillor replied, perhaps with too little questioning. "But we are not here to judge your soul, only to arrange your roles." He cleared his throat. "It is the decision of this council," he said, "that the title Marchese di Montelupo be formally restored to the person of Lorenzo, upon confirmation of certain identifying details that can be obtained from the estate records and from remaining staff. The properties currently held under that title shall be divided. A substantial portion, including the ancestral seat, shall revert to him. Another portion shall remain under the control of Carlo di Montelupo, who shall bear a secondary title to be confirmed by the appropriate office. In this way, public scandal will be minimized, and the name of Montelupo will remain honored." Carlo's shoulders sagged, but he did not protest. "And the matter of his previous absence?" a councillor asked. "It will be recorded as a medical separation now ended," the presiding councillor said. "No accusations will be entered into the formal record. In private, we will advise all parties to show discretion. Too much noise harms everyone." He looked at Bianca. "As for you, Countess," he said, "your decision to support this claim has been vindicated. Though your actions were unconventional, they have contributed to the correction of an injustice. We advise you, however, to consider carefully how you proceed regarding your engagement." Bianca inclined her head. "I understand." The session concluded. People rose, talking quietly. The current Marchese approached Lorenzo and Bianca. Face to face, the resemblance was faint but real, something in the line of the jaw, in the set of the eyes. "I never wished you harm," Carlo said to Lorenzo. "If you are my cousin, then I have sat in your chair for years without knowing it. I cannot pretend that stepping aside will be easy, but neither can I cling to what was never truly mine." "I do not wish to throw you into the road," Lorenzo replied. "You have managed the estate. You have carried the name. I ask only what was always intended." "Then we will have to learn to share what can be shared," Carlo said. "You will find that inherited duties weigh more than they shine." He turned to Bianca. "Countess," he said, "it seems you have more courage than the rest of us combined. I hope society repays you with some measure of the respect you deserve." "I expect nothing from society," she replied. "It tends to pay late and poorly." He gave a brief, almost rueful smile and moved away. Later, in Rinaldi's office, the lawyer poured them each a small glass of wine. "To a victory," he said. Lorenzo looked at the glass as if it were an unfamiliar object. "I suppose that is what this is," he said. "I have a name again." "More than a name," Rinaldi said. "A title. Lands. Income. You will not have to wander any more, my friend." "No," Lorenzo agreed softly. "I will not wander." Bianca held her own glass without drinking. "Then it is done," she said. "For the most part," Rinaldi replied. "There will be papers to sign, inventories to adjust, introductions to make. But yes, the main knot has been cut." He glanced between them. "There remains, however, the question of your engagement," he added delicately. "It has been noted in the petition, it will be assumed." Bianca set down her glass. "Assumed?" "That you intend to proceed," Rinaldi said. "It is not every day that a nobleman regains his title and is already engaged to a respectable widow. Many would call it a fortunate arrangement." "For whom?" Lorenzo asked quietly. "For both of you," Rinaldi said. "On paper, at least." When they were finally alone, walking back toward the modest lodging they had taken in the city, Bianca and Lorenzo moved in silence. Milan bustled around them. Carriages rolled by, ladies crossed the street with parasols, boys shouted advertisements for pamphlets. The noise felt far away. "You are quiet," Bianca said at last. "So are you," he replied. "You have what you came for," she went on. "A name, a place, a house that is yours." He nodded. "And you?" he asked. "What do you have?" She smiled faintly. "A story people will think twice before mocking. That is already something." They turned into a quieter street. "Bianca," he said. The sound of her name in his voice made her breath catch. "Yes," she asked. "You heard what Rinaldi said," he began. "People will assume we are to be married." "They already assumed much worse," she replied. "True," he said, "but assumptions become expectations. Expectations become obligations. And obligations are something you now have in abundance," she finished for him. He stopped walking. She halted beside him. "I do not want you to become another obligation for me," he said. "Nor do I wish to become one for you. I asked you to stand beside me because I had no other way to be heard. You did more than I had any right to ask. Now that I have been restored, you must be free." "Free?" she echoed. "From what?" "From a promise made under extraordinary circumstances," he said. "You did not accept my engagement because you dreamed of being Marchesa. You accepted it to give me a chance. That chance has borne fruit. You should not be bound further by it." She looked at him steadily. "And you?" she asked. "What do you wish to be bound by?" He hesitated. "Duty for a time," he said. "There will be so much to repair, tenants to reassure, staff to reorganize, accounts to review. I will be watched closely. Every move will be judged. If I keep our engagement, people will say I clung to the woman who gave me legitimacy, that I rewarded her by taking her wealth along with my own. If I release you, they will say you were wise enough to step back. I would rather bear the shadow myself." "You assume much about what people will say," she replied. "I have seen how they talk," he said. "You have too. Let me at least try to protect you from the next wave." "You think releasing me would protect me," she said quietly. "Eventually," he answered, "the scandal will fade. They will remember only that you were the one who brought the truth to light. That is a nobler story than the one where they sneer that you snared a Marchese from your own doorstep." She winced. "You see," he said gently, "it is already an uncomfortable tale. I do not like the way they will tell it." "And what of what we want?" she asked, almost in a whisper. He closed his eyes briefly. "What I want," he said, "is to take you back to that house by the lake and never leave it again. To read you all the books I pretended not to be interested in. To sit in your garden until we are both old and grey, and the servants roll their eyes at how often we repeat the same stories." She laughed once helplessly. "Then why do you speak of duty?" she asked. "Because wanting is one thing," he said. "Destroying your peace for the sake of it is another. I carry enough guilt for one lifetime. I will not add to it by dragging you into years of scrutiny, calculations, and political marriages I refuse to make." "Political marriages," she repeated. "You expect to be pressured into one." "Of course," he said. "A restored title is a prize. Families will flock. They will say, 'Forget the widow who sheltered you. Here is a fresh girl with powerful uncles.' If I choose you, they will mutter that I think with my heart instead of my head. I would gladly bear that, but I would not have you bear the whispers aimed at you whenever you enter a room on my arm." "And if I am willing?" she asked. He opened his eyes and looked at her. "I cannot ask that of you," he said softly. "Not after you have already given me so much. I would rather step away now while the choice can still appear generous from both our sides." "Appear," she repeated. "We would pretend we end our engagement by mutual agreement because the circumstances have changed." "Yes," he said. "We will say we remain friends. It will be true." She stared at the cobblestones. "And afterward," she asked, "will we see one another?" "Perhaps," he said, "at a concert, at someone's dinner, as acquaintances, as what the world expects." She let out a breath that sounded almost like a sigh. "You have decided," she said. "I have argued with myself for days," he replied. "I fear breaking my own heart less than I fear breaking yours." "Do you imagine mine is untouched?" she asked a little sharply. "No," he said. "That is why I tread so carefully." They resumed walking, slower now. When they reached their lodging, they sat in the small sitting room, facing each other across a low table. No servant hovered. They had sent Marta back to the lake ahead of them with instructions for the house. Bianca folded her hands. "Very well," she said. "Let us speak plainly." "I would welcome nothing else," he replied. "You ask to release me from our engagement," she said. "You do it in the name of my safety, my peace, and your new duties. If I agree, people will say I was sensible. If I refuse, they will say I am infatuated." Cruelly put, he said. But yes. And if I ask to release you, she countered, if I say that I do not wish to be the wife of a man whose every step will be weighed, whose decisions will affect hundreds, whose days will be filled with petitions and more petitions, if I say I want my quiet garden and my modest house and my freedom from that world, will you resent me? He looked startled. Freedom? He said. Is that how you see it? I have tasted enough of that society to know its flavor, she answered. I do not miss it. I do not yearn for balls and salons. If I married you, I would be expected to stand beside you at all of them. I do not know if I have the strength. The world would call you Marchesa, he said. I would still be Bianca, she replied. And Bianca is tired. He gave a short, uneven laugh. Then perhaps we are saving each other, he said. You from a life you do not want, and me from a guilt I do not wish to carry. Perhaps, she said. They fell silent. The choice had taken shape between them, not from selfishness but from a complicated kind of love that did not yet dare to name itself. At least, she said at last, let it be my decision as much as yours. Do not stand before the world and say you are being noble. Allow me the courtesy of saying I chose this too. I would not dare claim the whole sacrifice, he said. We will say it together. They agreed on the words. The next day, Rinaldi drafted a brief notice, dry and respectful. The Countess Bianca di Lazzaro and Signor Lorenzo, it read, who had previously announced their intention to marry, have by mutual accord resolved not to proceed with the union. They remain on good terms and request that their privacy be respected. In practice, of course, privacy was not respected. There were murmurs, guesses, theories. Some said she had wisely withdrawn once his title was confirmed. Others, kinder, said both had realized that their paths were too different. No one but the two of them knew how much it cost to sign that notice. Within a fortnight, arrangements were made. Lorenzo returned to the Montelupo estate to begin a new life as its rightful master. He was received with cautious courtesy. Old servants studied him and said in private that the boy they had once known had come home at last. Bianca went back to Lake Como. When she stepped into her hall, Marta was waiting, eyes bright with questions she did not entirely voice. You are back, the housekeeper said. I am, Bianca replied. And he? Marta asked. The signor... The Marchese? He is where he belongs, Bianca said. In his house, with his people. And you? Marta asked softly. Where do you belong, Countess? Bianca looked around at the familiar walls, the staircase, the doors leading to the library, the sitting room, the garden beyond. Here, she said. For now, here. Life settled. The worst of the gossip faded, as Lorenzo had predicted. Some people, like Giulio and the Marchesa, visited with elaborate politeness to congratulate her on her discernment. The priest came with genuine warmth, thanking her for having insisted on seeing the stranger as more than a burden. Letters arrived from Milan, sometimes bearing the Montelupo seal. Lorenzo wrote rarely and briefly, careful not to give the gossips more fuel than necessary. His words were measured, practical, grateful. He told her of repairs made to the east wing, of new terms offered to tenants, of books recovered from locked cabinets. He did not speak of his heart. Neither did she. At twilight, Bianca often walked alone by the edge of the lake. The house stood behind her, steady and quiet as before. The wind on the water carried distant voices from the village, faint and indistinct. To anyone watching from afar, her life would have looked settled. The scandal had passed. The truth had been established. The engagement had been dissolved. Everything, people said, had turned out as it should. Only Bianca, looking at the water, and Lorenzo, standing at the window of his restored estate, knew how much of their own longing had been set aside for that calm. Spring returned to the lake as if nothing in the world had changed. The trees unfolded their young leaves. The village put away its heavy coats. Children shouted by the water's edge again, chasing one another with sticks. The bells rang as they always had. Bianca's days resumed their old rhythm, at least on the surface. Breakfast at the small table, letters in the morning, walk in the garden, a little music in the evening when she had the patience to sit at the piano. Yet beneath that steady surface, there was a new kind of quiet. Before Lorenzo, her solitude had been like a heavy cloak she had learned to wear. After him, it felt more like a garment she had outgrown and was now forced back into. She did her best not to admit that to herself. One afternoon, as she sorted through invitations and notices on her desk, she found a letter with an unfamiliar seal. She broke it and read, "Dear Countess Bianca, it has been too long since we had the pleasure of your company in our house. Next month, we intend to host a small musical evening at our villa overlooking the lake. It would honor us greatly if you would attend. A few old friends from Milan have agreed to join us. Perhaps you will find some familiar faces. With sincere affection, Signora Elena Bianchi." Bianca smiled despite herself. Elena Bianchi was one of the few who had not turned away when gossip had been at its loudest. She had written once months ago, only to inquire after Bianca's health, saying nothing of scandal or of Marchesi. "A musical evening," Bianca murmured. She folded the letter and set it aside. Marta entered a moment later, carrying a pile of freshly laundered linen. "You have that look," the housekeeper said. "A letter? An invitation," Bianca replied. "Elena Bianchi, at the villa." "Oh," Marta said, brightening. "You used to enjoy those evenings. Before the village acquired a new tongue," Bianca finished. "Yes. Will you go?" Marta asked. Bianca hesitated. "What do you think they will say if I do?" she asked. "They will say what they always say," Marta replied briskly. "What matters is what you say to yourself when you look in the mirror in the morning." Bianca laughed softly. "You grow bolder with the years." "You forced me to," Marta retorted. "Will you go?" Bianca looked out the window at the lake, at the soft line where water met sky. "I think I will," she said. "Good," Marta replied. "Your nice black silk could use an evening out." It was only later, reading the letter again, that Bianca noticed the postscript, written in a smaller hand. "P.S. I have reason to believe that an old acquaintance of yours will attend as well. I hope this will not deter you." Her heart stumbled, her fingers tightened on the paper. "Of course," she whispered. Elena would invite him. She slept badly for the next week. By day, she told herself she might have misinterpreted the hint. There were many acquaintances after all. By night, she saw Lorenzo's face in every dream that was honest. When the evening finally arrived, the sky was clear. The lake caught the last pale light of the sun as Carlo drove the carriage along the familiar road toward the Bianchi villa. In the carriage, Bianca's hands lay folded in her lap. Marta had persuaded her into a gown with a softer line, still dark, but with a hint of shine at the hem. Her hair was arranged with more care than usual, though she had insisted on no jewels save a simple pair of earrings. "Are you well, Countess?" Carlo asked from the driver's seat, glancing back. "As well as anyone going to a concert," she answered. He snorted softly, knowing her dislike of crowds. When they arrived, lanterns already lit the Bianchi gardens. Music floated faintly from inside the house, the gentle sound of a string quartet tuning. Elena herself came to greet Bianca at the door, all warmth and genuine pleasure. "My dear Bianca," she cried, taking her hands. "You are finally here. I was beginning to worry you had turned into one of those saints who live only within four walls." "I assure you I am no saint," Bianca replied. "Merely stubborn." "Good," Elena laughed. "The world has enough saints. Come, you must meet our guests." Bianca was led through rooms where candles burned and voices mingled. People turned, nodded, smiled. Some looked at her with curiosity, but not with open malice. Time had done its soft work. She recognized a few faces from years past. They greeted her politely, commented on the view, the music, the spring. No one mentioned titles or engagements. She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Then, in a corner of the salon, she saw him. Lorenzo stood near a tall window, half in shadow, speaking quietly with an older gentleman. He wore a dark coat, well cut, with no more awkwardness in its fit. His hair was shorter now, his beard trimmed. The transformation into a man of rank was complete, at least on the outside. But when he turned, sensing her gaze, the expression in his eyes was the same as on the night he had first seen her by the lamplight in the hall, startled, grateful, unable to look away. He excused himself from his companion and came toward her. They stopped a few steps apart, as if an invisible curtain of all that had happened hung between them. "Countess," he said quietly. "Marchese," she answered. They both smiled then, unable to prevent it. "I did not know if you would come," he admitted. "I considered staying home," she said, But Elena is very persuasive. She is, he agreed. She convinced me as well. They stood in a brief, awkward silence. Then both spoke at once. How have you... I hope you have been... They stopped, laughed, and the stiffness broke a little. You first, he said. How have I been? She repeated. Busy. The house still requires attention, even when it pretends not to. The garden insists on growing whether I watch it or not. The village still has opinions. In short, life continues. And you? She added. How fares the restored Marchese? He lifted a shoulder. Busy as well, he said. There were more neglected accounts than I had imagined. Carlo kept things running, but he had his own priorities. I have spent months listening to complaints, signing documents, and asking old men to tell me stories of myself. That must be strange, she murmured. It is, he said. To hear that one did this or that as a boy, to see evidence of a life one does not remember living. It is like reading a novel where the main character has your face, but not your memories. Do you remember more now? She asked. Some, he said. The fog has thinned in places. A game played in a courtyard. A winter evening by a fire. My father's cough. Nothing that changes the outcome. Only small lights in the dark. And are you... She hesitated. Content? He considered the word. I am not unhappy, he said. I am grateful to be where I am meant to be. I care for the people who depend on me. I find satisfaction in setting things in order. But content? He met her eyes. No, I would not use that word. Music began in the next room, gentle and clear. Elena came to rescue them from the center of the room. You two look terribly serious, she chided. This is not a courtroom. Come and listen to the quartet. If you must talk about estates and titles, at least do it against a pleasant background of violins. They let themselves be drawn into the music room, where chairs were arranged and guests settled. Bianca sat a few seats away from Lorenzo, close enough to see the line of his profile when he turned toward the players. As the musicians began, the sound washed through the room, soothing and bittersweet. Bianca watched his hand, resting on his knee. It was steady now, no longer trembling as it had in the early days at her house. She remembered that hand turning pages in her library, lifting a teacup, adjusting a lamp. When the piece ended, there was polite applause. Another began. She found she could not sit through all of it. Her chest felt too tight. During a pause, she rose quietly and slipped out into the garden. The night air was cool, scented faintly with earth and young leaves. Lanterns hung from branches, throwing circles of pale light on the gravel paths. She walked toward a low stone wall overlooking the lake and rested her hands on it. The water stretched out, calm, reflecting the stars in broken patterns. She heard footsteps behind her and knew even before he spoke who it was. Do you want me to go back inside? Lorenzo asked softly. I can leave you the garden. She did not turn immediately. That would be ungrateful, she said. When the garden is not mine to give. He came to stand beside her, leaving a proper space between them. You left the music, he observed. So did you, she replied. I could not hear it, he said. Not over my thoughts. Ah, she said quietly. The famous Marchese thoughts. Do not mock them, he said lightly. They have grown heavier with each new ledger. She smiled at the lake. They stood in silence for a time, listening to the faint echo of strings floating out through the open windows. Lorenzo, she said at last. Yes, he answered. Are you angry with me? She asked. He turned, startled. Angry, he repeated. Why? For signing that notice, she said. For agreeing to end the engagement, for letting you go without a fight. He laughed once, softly. I have had many feelings these months, he said, but anger at you has never been one of them. What then? She pressed. He looked out at the water. Regret, he said. Longing. Doubt. A persistent sense that I have been clever in all the wrong ways. In what sense? She asked gently. In thinking I could protect you from what you did not ask me to protect you from, he answered. In deciding, on your behalf, what life would be too heavy for you to carry. In acting as if your happiness were an equation I could solve alone. He shook his head. I told myself I was being noble, he continued. That stepping back was an act of love. Perhaps part of it was, but part of it was cowardice. I was afraid. Afraid of tying you to a future I did not yet understand. Afraid of the scrutiny. Afraid of failing you in public, instead of in private. And I, she said, told myself I was being sensible, that releasing you was an act of generosity, that you needed to walk into your new role without a widow clinging to your sleeve. Perhaps that was partly true, but there was fear in me too. What fear? He asked quietly. That I would lose myself, she replied. That I would become only the Marchese's wife, measured by the size of my drawing room and the number of my receptions. I had just begun to feel like a person again in my own house. The idea of exchanging that for endless expectations, it frightened me. He nodded slowly. So we each hid behind our own idea of sacrifice, he said, and called it virtue. Yes, she said simply. The admission hung between them like a fragile bridge. Tell me something, she said after a moment. Those nights in your great house after all the tenants and lawyers had gone, when you walked the corridors alone, did you ever think of the blue room in my palazzo? He closed his eyes briefly. Almost every night, he said. I thought of the cracked ceiling, the lamp that never quite turned up high enough, the sound of your steps in the corridor when you came to listen outside my door. It was the first place, after the fog, where I felt human again. And the garden, she asked. Do you remember how you used to complain about the roses? He smiled. I remember complaining about the thorns, he said. You called me spoiled. You were, she replied. I still am, he said. Look at me, a man given back a title he had lost, and still he stands here wishing for a smaller house. She turned to him fully then. Is that what you wish for? She asked. Truly? He met her eyes. I wish for you, he said simply. Wherever you are. In a small house or a large one. By the lake or in the city. I told myself I could lock that wish away under duty. I was wrong. Her breath caught. For a moment she could not speak. You said once, she murmured, that what you wanted was to sit in my garden until we were both old and grey, telling the same stories. I remember, he said. I have told no new stories worth repeating since then. And yet, she said, you were the one who told me we must be sensible. I was a fool, he said. Since then I have discovered something. What is that? She whispered. That duty without joy turns into bitterness, he said. That a house, however splendid, is cold if one returns each night to empty rooms. That honor and love need not be enemies. If I manage my estate honestly, if I care for my people, if I fulfill my obligations, no counsel in the world can say I have failed merely because I chose to share that life with the woman who saved me. And what will they whisper? She asked, half amused, half afraid. Let them whisper, he answered. They will whisper anyway. At least let them whisper something true. She studied him. Then why are you here? She asked softly. At Elena's villa, in this garden beside me. What do you intend, Lorenzo di Montelupo? His jaw tensed. He drew a breath, as if steadying himself for battle, though no weapon was in sight but his words. I intend, he said, to finally ask you what I should have asked in that hall months ago. Without lawyers, without counsels, without newspapers, only with my heart. Bianca di Lazzaro, will you marry me? Not to help me regain a name, not to silence gossip, not to fulfill anyone's expectations but our own. Will you marry me because I love you, and because without you my life, however correct, is incomplete? Heat flooded her face. Her hands trembled on the low wall. I choose a dramatic setting for your questions, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. There is a lake, a villa, and an audience of stars, he replied. It seemed appropriate. What if I say no? She asked. Then I will return to my house, he said quietly. I will continue to do my duty. I will not trouble you again. I will respect you as I have always tried to do. And I will go to my grave knowing that I once asked the right question, even if the answer was not the one I wished. And if I say yes, she whispered. Then, he said, his voice barely audible now, I will count myself the luckiest man in Italy, no matter what anyone else says. Silence fell. Bianca looked at him, at the man who had arrived at her gate with torn boots and a fogged mind, who had eaten soup at her table with the humility of a beggar and the instinctive grace of a gentleman. She saw the Marchese, yes, but beneath that she saw the Lorenzo who had shelved her books, teased her about her roses, and stood in her kitchen door laughing with the maids. Do you remember, she asked slowly, what you said in the council chamber when they questioned my judgment? I said that if you were wrong, then nobility meant less than I thought. he answered. And if I had been wrong, she pressed. I would have been no less grateful, he said. She drew a breath. Then listen to me now, she said. If I say yes, it will not be because you are Marchese. It will be because you are the man who told me stories in the library when my house had forgotten the sound of a man's voice. It will be because you are the only person who ever looked at my solitude and did not assume it was all I wanted. It will be because you have a way of standing in a room that makes it feel less empty. It will be because without you my days are accurate but not alive. He stared at her, hope and disbelief warring on his face. Bianca, he breathed. You released me once, she said. Now I release you from that release. I am not a girl, Lorenzo. I know what I choose. I know what the world will say. Let them. I am choosing you. Tears glinted suddenly in his eyes. He took a step closer, then stopped himself, still leaving a narrow space between them. May I touch your hand? He asked, voice unsteady. She smiled. Now you ask, she said. She extended her hand. He took it gently in both of his, as if it were something fragile and priceless. Then say it, he whispered. Please, say the word I have been afraid to hope for. Yes, she said clearly. Yes, Lorenzo. I will marry you. The breath he let out on that word seemed to carry months of tension away with it. He bowed his head over her hand, not in a grand, courtly gesture, but in something humbler, more intimate. For a moment his forehead rested lightly on her fingers. Thank you, he murmured, for trusting me again, for trusting yourself. The music inside swelled, some joyful allegro that matched the sudden rush in Bianca's chest. What now? She asked softly. Now, he said, lifting his head. We tell Elena she has succeeded in her plan far more thoroughly than she expected. And after Elena, she asked. After Elena, he said. We write to Rinaldi, to the council, to whoever must hear it. But this time our notice will be simple and shameless. The Countess Bianca di Lazzaro and the Marchese Lorenzo di Montelupo are to be married. No explanations, no apologies. And where will we live? She asked, a little breathless, as if she could hardly believe they were discussing such ordinary details. Wherever you wish, he replied. We will keep both houses. Your palazzo by the lake will remain yours in deed and in spirit. We will spend the summers here, when the heat in the city grows unbearable. In winter, we may stay at Montelupo, so I can attend to business, and you can ignore all the parties you do not wish to attend. You promise I may ignore them? She said. I will stand between you and every invitation, he answered. If anyone complains, I will tell them the Marchesa prefers honest conversation and lakeside walks to dances. And if they dare criticize, I will remind them that without you, the Marchese would not be standing where he is. She laughed, the sound bright and free, like a bell. You are too ready with your speeches, she said. I have practiced them alone, he replied. It is a relief to finally speak them aloud. They walked slowly back toward the house, still hand in hand, not caring who saw. A few guests at the windows turned and smiled. Elena, catching sight of them, clapped her hands silently in delight. The weeks that followed were brisk, but not frantic. This time there was no pretense of convenience. The announcement went out in clear language, without mention of mutual releases or changed circumstances. Reactions varied, as expected. Some called it romantic, others called it foolish. A few, more honest, admitted they envied such courage. Giulio wrote a stiff letter expressing surprise, but ending with reluctant blessings. The Marchesa Conti sent a note that managed to be both patronizing and complimentary at once. The priest of the village came in person, tears in his eyes. I will have the joy of blessing the marriage of a woman who once taught me about true charity, he said. God is kind. On a mild morning not long after, in the small church by the lake, Bianca walked down the short aisle without veil or fanfare, dressed in a gown that was simple but new. Lorenzo waited at the altar, not in splendid gold-trimmed velvet, but in a dark suit that fit him perfectly and carried no weight of theatricality. Marta dabbed at her eyes in the front pew. Carlo stood beside the door like a guardian. A few neighbors, a few old friends, Elena Bianchi, even Bellini the tutor, all gathered not to measure but to witness. The ceremony was brief. Will you, Lorenzo, take Bianca? I will, he said, without hesitation. Will you, Bianca, take Lorenzo? I will, she answered, her voice clear. When the priest declared them husband and wife, There was no roar of applause, only a gentle murmur of joy. Lorenzo and Bianca turned to face those gathered, hands clasped. Later, when they stepped out of the church into the sunlight, the lake shone at the edge of their vision, as it had on the night they had first risked scandal in the name of compassion. "Look," Lorenzo murmured, nodding toward the water. "It approves." "Do lakes approve?" she asked. "This one does," he said. "It brought us together twice." They walked down the path toward the carriage, though neither of them seemed eager to climb in. "What now?" she asked quietly. "Now," he said. "We go home." "Which one?" she teased. He smiled. "Today," he replied, "the one with the blue room and the stubborn roses." She squeezed his hand. "And tomorrow?" she asked. "Tomorrow," he said. "Wherever you are, Bianca. That will always be home for me." Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.